Fáilte, a chuirde Gael. How the hell are you getting on during this absolutely mental time in world history? I'm sitting in the living room of my house because, like just about everybody else in the country right now, I am doing some social distancing and self quarantine, féin éinearú, as they call it, as Gaeilge. And now I'm just sitting here looking out at the River Lee recording this, and you might be able to hear the fire crackling away in the background there as well. And despite all the madness, I've actually been kind of enjoying having some time to myself and getting time to do things that I've been meaning to do for a long time anyway. It's been kind of a mad month or two, really, for me, which is the main reason why there hasn't been any Rebel Matters podcast episodes for the last while now, because I was over in Palestine getting the Ackley Palestine, or the Palestine Community Gym, set up in the Aida refugee camp. That was a few weeks ago, and the few weeks leading up to that was quite intense, just preparing for it and everything. Then we were over there for about 2 weeks, a wee crew of 6 of us, myself, Sally McMonigal, Vicky Langan, Alex Samson, Pater O'Gill, and Kate Maher. We're all over there, and we had a great time. We were like absolutely on it for 12 days. We were just working, not getting that much sleep, and between setting up the gym and visiting people and making friends as well. Like, it was a very intense period of time, and we got out just in the nick of time, because a few days after we left and got back to Ireland, the coronavirus hit Bethlehem, and the whole of Bethlehem and the West Bank went on an absolutely complete shutdown. And if we hadn't got the job done when we did, we might not have got it done for a number of months. Definitely not until the other side of the summer anyway, so it was really good to do that. And the response to that project was class. We kind of relaunched the fundraising while we were over there, raised an extra $9,000 for the project, got loads of media coverage, and everybody got behind us. The messages we were getting while we were out there, we were getting dozens of messages every day from people in Ireland and abroad as well. Like, a few days after we got back from that trip, I went off to America with Kneecap to go with them on their debut US tour, and the first gig was in New York on the 7th of March, I think it was. And there was American people coming up to me who had heard of the project and were coming up and giving me hugs and saying well done, and they had sponsored the project through the GoFundMe and through PayPal and stuff as well, which was absolutely amazing. Just it was great to meet people who were so far away, who had supported the project, and give them a big hug. Something that we're not doing these days, because we need to stay away from each other for the foreseeable. Maintain the social distancing guidelines and look after one another as best as we can while we get through this unprecedented and quite mental time. The Kneecap tour was cut short, of course, because the preceding 6 gigs, the 6 out of the 7 gigs after the first one went ahead in New York, and then the 6 next ones were all called off because of the coronavirus. We were due to come back. Well, what the plan was, I was due to go to Palestine again on the 18th of March, and the lads were going to come back to Ireland on the 18th of March as well. But because the tour was cancelled and things were getting very intense, we all came back on the 14th of March, left on the 14th, arrived on the 15th. And the day we got back then, we had to take the decision here in Cork to close Ackley, the personal training facility that I run with the great crew in Cork here. We had to close it for the first time in 6 years, and the same as most of the other small local businesses, but especially the gyms and the places where people have been congregating larger numbers, we had to close it, and it's closed for the foreseeable future now. we're still working as a team, the Ackley team in Cork. We're still working together to train the staff out in Ackley, Palestine remotely, and we are working on making some new programs and other things that we're able to do while the gym is closed, catching up on things that we were meaning to do all along anyway, and then coming up with some new projects to keep ourselves busy and occupied and keep ourselves creative while we are closed. But the first and foremost thing that we are conscious of is the safety of our staff and the safety of the members and the safety of the general public as well. So we're closed for the foreseeable future, and like as I was saying, everybody else, most of us, like most people out there, except for the people who are working on the front lines at the minute, working in the hospitals, in healthcare, and providing essential services for the communities out there, and working in the food shops and stuff like that. There, we are in a sort of a self quarantine as the situation unfolds, which is of course unfortunate for small businesses and things like that. But there is a silver lining on that cloud as well, in that a lot of us can spend more time with our families, reconnect with people, even though it may be harder to physically connect. But I've been here writing letters. I posted about 7 letters today. I've been practicing more music and doing the wee jobs that I've been meaning to do for a long time. And I also have a lot more time now to dedicate to the Rebel Matters podcast. To be honest, we're not sure how long Ackley is going to be closed for, and one thing that I really want to do is make the most of the time, and I've decided to really focus in on the Rebel Matters podcast as my main project for the next few months, especially for as long as Ackley is closed. But I'd like to use this time now to really establish the podcast on a more regular basis and build the fan base and build a community around the podcast as well. And there is a small bit of a community there already, and really, really good listenership and people who get in touch all the time. Very, very grateful for that there. And I'm very also excited for the opportunity to be able to build a podcast and get it up to the next level and engage more with you guys who are out there listening on the social media pages, the Facebook page, the Instagram page, which is rebel_matters, and also on the Patreon page, which I've developed a little bit in the last few days since I've had the time at home here to kind of get stuck into it. So the Patreon page, for anybody who doesn't know, is the platform where you can become a patron of the podcast and support it with a small monthly subscription. Like, the podcast is free on all platforms, and it's always going to be free. One of the things that attracts me to the podcast as a medium is the fact that it's widely available. It's kind of like a open source, and it's free on all platforms. This one is anyway. I know some podcasts are behind a paywall, but this one will never be behind a paywall. So the Patreon is a way that you can kind of contribute to the production and the sort of like ongoing creation of the podcast with a monthly subscription. And I've set up 2 tiers on the Patreon now. There's a €5 per month tier and a €10 per month tier. There's no difference between the benefits in the €5 tier and the €10 tier to you as a patron if you do sign up to either of those. They're just 2 levels, and you can decide which level you want to support the podcast at if you're considering becoming a patron. And as the community around the podcast builds and the listenership builds and more people come on board in the Patreon, then I'm going to make sure that there's exclusive content going up on the Patreon Rebel Matters website, and that anyone who's a supporter and a patron of the podcast gets to have an input into the direction of the podcast and get some sort of behind the scene access to see how the podcast episodes are made and everything like that there, which is something that I'm really excited about. I would be really grateful for anybody who wants to support the podcast in that way, because I really want to give it a crack, and I want to have the time to put into it. Well, I have the time now, but it's also good to be able to cover the cost of making the podcast. And now with Ackley closed, it's ever more important to have some source of income during this absolutely mental time. So I am going to get myself stuck into making these podcasts and get them done on a regular basis, get really good interviews done, and I hope we can build a nice wee connection around within the community that is around the podcast through the Patreon and through the social media. So I'm really looking forward to getting that done as well. You'll find the Rebel Matters podcast on patreon.com, and that's where you can sign up to become a patron and become a supporter of the podcast if you want to, and I would really, really appreciate it. And if it's not a possibility for you at the minute, then that's fine as well. Keep on listening and enjoying it, and what you can do to support the podcast in that case is share it on social media and tell people about it, and also get in touch and let me know what you think about it, because it's always great to get feedback from people and from you guys, and I love it. It's kind of what keeps me going, really. Like, that's what's the main thing that spurred me on to kind of use this time to build the podcast, has definitely been people getting in touch and telling me that they're listening, and that you're enjoying it, and giving feedback and comments, and even starting discussions about some of the conversations that you've heard on the podcast. It's class. So let's see what we can do together. I'm really looking forward to it, and I guess the best place to start with the building of the podcast from here is to get cracking with the next episode, which is episode 61, with a good friend of mine called Lewis Kenny. I met Lewis last year, and as you'll hear in the podcast here, he is a man of many talents. He was the poet in residence for the Bohemians Football Club in Dublin. He's a talented balaclava maker, amongst other knitted garments and vestments, and he is in plays, and is a gardener or a horticulturist, I suppose, and has got a really interesting story. And I've been meaning to make this podcast with him for a long time, because over the last year we've developed quite a strong friendship, and we have had many late nights sitting up over a few glasses of red wine and having deep conversations. So we've been trying to get this podcast done for ages, and of course now with self-quarantine we have plenty of time to be doing it. So the other day I recorded this podcast with him on Skype, which is something I'm going to be doing more often now, because of the fact that it is not really advisable to be doing face-to-face podcasts at the minute, and not really advisable to be out and travelling around and stuff like that there. So I'm going to get loads more Skype podcasts done, and I'm going to refine that process as well. As you will probably pick up during this episode with Lewis, there's this fucking clock in the living room that, like, I'm actually in the living room now in my house, and the clock's not working, so you can't hear it ticking, but the odd time it just takes a notion and starts ticking again. And I had my headphones in, and I was listening to Lewis while we were recording the podcast, so it didn't actually pick up on the clock ticking during the interview. But then when I listened back to it, when I was doing the editing and stuff like that there, you can hear the clock ticking. So, Tab Broner and Fishin, I'm sorry about the wee bit of clock background noise if it drives you mental. And I'll make sure it's not ticking the next time I'm doing a Skype interview. Sorry, lads. Anyway, I know you're going to enjoy this conversation with Lewis. Lads, hit me up on social media about this episode and all the episodes that are upcoming. I really want to hear from you. This is the time for us to communicate with each other, I suppose, more than ever, because we can't be as physically present with each other. Then I think this is the time to start making the connections through other mediums. And actually very sort of privileged and honoured to have the podcast as one of the things that, one of the sort of forms of communication that can grow, and that you can use to stay connected with each other, and we can all use to stay connected with each other and hear people's stories during this time. Hearing people's stories is just something that really makes me tick, and I think it's something that I'll never get bored of, is just sitting down with someone and hearing them talk about their own story and their own, what they're getting up to, and seeing what makes them tick, I guess. And especially when it's a dear friend like Lewis. So I'm going to leave you to it. Enjoy the episode, and as usual there's a wee bit of Roald Dahl at the end after the outro music. So if you want a bit of a bedtime story, then hang tight with that there. If you want to go back to the start of the Roald Dahl book that I'm reading at the end of each episode, it's in and around episode 50 or 51. I think I started reading Roald Dahl's Boy Tales of Childhood. You can go back, and then the chapters are then after every subsequent episode or wherever, if you want to make your way through them. Anyway, Corte Gael, Buen Soltas, and Agrand Shaw Le Lewis Kenny. Oh no, okay. We're live. First time I've done a fireside podcast, so unreal. How have you been getting on?
Yeah, I've been grand. Like everyone I know is like slowly cracking up, but like this is probably the first time I've actually had a couple of days to myself in years. So I'm actually because like my college is closed and my school is closed, so I don't think I've ever had this much free time. So I'm actually getting lots of creative stuff done, which is amazing because I never, like between college and work, I'd have 4 hours in a day of me time, and so now I have 24/7 me time. I'm just getting, I just like that. I'm like a dog who has finally caught its own tail. I don't even know what to do with myself.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Like it's just mad how things have just changed so fast, like overnight. And then obviously like it's shit because like people are getting sick and everything. But then I suppose we're kind of in the fortunate position to at the minute, like in touch wood, not be sick and just have all this time all of a sudden where it's as if like I found myself doing things the last few days that I've been meaning to do for ages. Like for example, like this podcast, we've been talking about doing this for like about a year.
It's a year, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's been sweet, but then also it's been very important. Like, Jesus, it's been so like crucial for me to be doing this stuff because otherwise I'd be fucking flipping out because like the like Ackley basically closed down overnight. Like,
yeah, jeez, but like not even just for the people in your gym that have that kind of outlet to go to. It must be very tough for yourself as an independent business owner.
Yeah, like I think like there's nothing really. I've been talking to a few people around town and stuff like that. There are different businesses that have closed down and stuff, and I think like closing down at an early stage has been the right thing to do, and for any small business, especially like we're probably on the, you know, like, in a business where we need to be super cautious because of the fact that we're working with people who are coming in like obviously sweating and stuff, but then we've got a lot of people who work in hospitals coming to train with us, and then people who have got like who are already sort of immunocompromised, whether they're going through chemo or they have got some sort of medical condition. So we just had to like kind of play it on the safe side. So it's completely shit, but I'm pretty like we'll rebuild it because we have like a really loyal group of like members and following we've built up over the years, whatever. And I think like at the end of the day, for us, the most important thing is that like we did the right thing at the right time. That's like what else can you do? Like really.
Yeah, that's this is it for a lot of people. They don't really know what to do. They don't really know what to do. Don't really know what to do about anything. But just in terms of your situation, like my sister's boyfriend runs a gym in Dublin as well, and he just kind of put the word out to his clients that like, you know, look, we're going through a bit of a hard time. This is hitting them hard financially, and most of them have agreed to. They're not asking for a refund for the month of their memberships. Now, some people have frozen their memberships and have actually offered to reopen, to actually reopen their memberships just so he can kind of see through the month, you know, which is a really nice thing.
Yeah, like I think like we're like seriously really fortunate at the minute with the way that Ackley has been built over the last 6 years, in that like we just freezed everybody's membership straight away, but like, we've worked really hard to over the last few years to become sort of like, I guess, like financially independent of ourselves, that we're not like paying back loads of loans or anything like that there, which has been great. So that and that's why we're in a fortunate position where, you know, we're not making the gym is closed down, the business is closed down, but it's not like there's nobody knocking on our door like looking for a fuckload of money for loans that we need to repay or anything like that there, which is good. And the staff, like, to be honest, like we've just kind of, it's in its early days yet, like, because a couple of days ago we were thinking, okay, we just need to get ourselves through the next 2 weeks, and we sort of redirected all our energies at starting to train the staff in the gym in Palestine, which was something that we were going to have to do pretty much remotely anyway, and it needs to be done regardless. And also, that's not it. Like we're doing that. It's just for the cause. Like we're not getting paid for that at all. Like so, but at the same time, it's good to be able to focus on something. So we've just been focusing in on that, and then we have some stuff that we like, same as anybody. We had stuff that we were meaning to do all for ages that we didn't get a chance to do because we were so busy, and we're just getting on with it now, which is good as well. Like, and the team at the gym are unbelievable. Like, it's just, we've just kind of redirected our energies to things that we are able to work on, that we kind of have still a measure of control over. But then it remains to be seen how long this is going to go on for. Like, so it's that's the uncertainty for everyone, really. Like,
I know, yeah, and but one of the the amazing things that I've seen that come from this is actually how a lot of people are supporting each other, and even though we all have to stay apart, we're all coming together to help whatever way we can. Which is which, to be honest, before, if you would ask me what would happen in this country if something like this was to happen, from going off previous, I suppose, emergencies or previous disasters where like, you know, with the snow, it only the bread was all whipped off the shelves and,
yeah.
and it only took 2 days before someone smashed a JCB through a little.
I know. Well, actually, but when the snow was here, though, it was like everyone was helping each other. Everyone was, the biggest thing that I remember from the snow is that, like, aside from people helping each other, is people got really playful with each other. Like, there's people starting spontaneous snow fights, like on the street, and like you fire a snowball at someone, and then all of a sudden they'd fire a few snowballs back at you, and the next thing you'd have a bit of a crack on like with randomers on the road, which is a class thing. That, like, that's whenever I was during the time when we had all that snow, I was thinking, this is unreal, because everyone's starting to play with each other and you're getting to know people and helping people out, and then it was nearly as if, like, the day after the snow was gone, everybody was like, right, fuck you, just bastards, fucking push your own car. And then everyone went kind of back to normal, which is something that, like, I really kind of hope that when we come out the other side of all the thing with the virus, that we don't just go back to the way it was before. And I think that maybe this is a lot more serious than a few days of snow or a week of snow, that maybe we're going to have to revisit how we kind of structure our society, because of the fact that it is, like, if there's anything this has gone to show how fragile everything is, like, that it can just stop overnight. And
yeah, absolutely. Like, just if you're following it, like, if you're following anything in the stock markets, you know, or anything, I suppose, in terms of, like, the economic impact of the virus as well, it just seems like that we're just going to skip the recession stage when we come out of this and go straight into the depression stage. and like, even just from talking to loads of, like, local businesses, I listened to an interview from the lad who runs the Thomas House in Dublin, which is it's just like a pub, you know, but it's a really important and really historical pub for the area and the Liberties. And you know, they've said, like, by the looks of things and the way this is going, they're going to have to shut their doors for good. And that's like 30 people out of work, and, like, that's just going to be the start of it. So yeah, like, there is going to have to be, like, you know, things in society are going to have to change, like, drastically.
Yeah, like, one thing that I've become, like, I was conscious of it before, but now I've become even more conscious and aware of it, is the fact that, like, when we do kind of come out the other side of this, it's such an important time to support local local enterprises and small businesses and stuff like that, because the fact of the matter is that all those big companies that we have on our high street, like fucking Topshop and fucking River Island Lifestyle, McDonald's, Burger King, they could keep going. They could close down for a few years and open up again, as same as they were before this struck, and which maybe like seems fine on the face of it, but in reality, like I think that's a big part of the problem with how we're structured at the minute. In that, like when you look at from the start to the end of the business process for them, where they farm cotton and then they get garment workers to work in very poor conditions, farmers to work in poor conditions, have a massive destructive impact on the environment, have a massive environmental impact just to get the clothes from wherever they made them to here, and then pay their workers like shit, and then they're going to be the last companies that are going to close down as well. Look around Cork, most of the local businesses have closed for the welfare of their staff and stuff, and the big multinationals are still open. So if there's anything that I hope for is that when we reorganise ourselves after this, that we acknowledge the importance of supporting local businesses because of the smaller impact it has on the planet, which would offset these kind of crises in the future, and also it's just supporting someone who is working hard, like on your doorstep, basically.
Absolutely. Have you ever watched a video called "The Story of Stuff"?
Is it an animation?
Yes, it would be like an animation.
Is it a person walking this way and then everything changes? Like they're going through and there's like, is it kind of two-tone kind of?
Yeah, it's a really basic. It's a really basic animation.
Yeah, I have seen it.
Yeah, where it was just like they're showing how the production line of the world is a linear thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like a circular thing. So what's being taken out of the earth is not essentially being put back in the way it should, and how it's just like a linear thing. It was just like where what's being taken out is just being disposed of somewhere else, and not it's not being properly managed.
Yeah, it's not a cycle.
And it's not a cycle, and it's just like that is the definition of insanity.
Yeah,
it was just like that, to have a linear line of production on a planet with finite resources.
It's mental. Actually, it's funny that you say that because, like, last year when I did the podcast with Dan Lambert, and we were kind of we were actually only really getting to know each other. I think that was only maybe the second time that we ever met, the day that we sat down to do the podcast. And it's mad how things have changed now, like how tight we all are in the group now since then. But we ended up kind of comparing notes with Ackley and Bang Bang, and the one thing that, even though they're two different kinds of business, as in many ways, but the common thread was that both of those businesses are set up to be kind of like a mutually beneficial cycle for everyone who's involved in it, from the people who are working there to the people who get the service, to the people who provide the goods to the service, and the net impact that it has on the planet. It was kind of like mutually beneficial the whole way around, even to the benefit of the wider community outside of the four walls of the businesses. And I think I definitely feel like that's why we've built up such a strong following, and how we've still been able to keep in business, because of the people recognise that. And I think it's the same for Bang Bang as well. But it's just amazing. It's just not the way. It's just not the way that business is done as such, because most of the time it's about the bottom line, and that's it.
It's not. It's not the way. It's definitely not the way big business is done. But I think you can kind of get the sense of a business from the minute you walk in. You know, it's just like what their intentions are, what their ethos is, and especially how they treat their workers as well. I mean, and what we're seeing a lot in this, like during COVID, is those businesses who turn big profits, like some of them massive profits, how they've treated their workers. Yeah. I'm very lucky, I suppose, in the sense that I work in a bar in a theatre, Project Art Centre, and they'd agreed to pay me for the 2 weeks of work that I'd lost. Which it's not something they didn't have. It's not something they had to do. I would be considered non-essential staff, like, you know, casual, like casual bar work. But they still wanted to make sure that we were all sorted. I'm also lucky in the sense that because I get paid by the government to go back to college, so I still get to keep that payment as well. So at the minute, I'm okay. Like, I'm definitely not as hard hit as some people. But the horror stories that are coming out for some people who are just like, on the day they were supposed to come in, everyone is told that they're let go. And like, this is before any provisions or any safety nets were put in for, in terms of social welfare for people suffering from COVID crisis. We're seeing a lot where so Fine Gael have just are implementing policies that will freeze mortgages for landowners, mortgages for householders. But as of now, that there's no such, there's nothing being implemented for tenants. So it's like, at the minute, nothing is being done to actually protect the tenants.
Yeah.
Who it's just like, and what's to say that, and what's to say that a landlord who has had a freeze in their rent will put, like, you're putting a lot of faith in landlords to actually pass, like, that's like that's just total like Fine Gael trickle down economics thing. That like that's how they think that works.
Yeah, it's like the same as I'd say for the vast, like, who has enough money in their bank account to keep paying rent when you're not earning any money, like, over the first month? Like, hardly anybody, like, so most tenants are going to be in a position where they're not going to be able to pay it, and that's, I think, like, that's another thing when I think of, like, the possibilities after we come out of this is that we acknowledge that our eyes are open to the way that, like, the regular people have been treated during it. And the thing that I'm kind of worried about at the minute is that we all just get blinded by the fact that the coronavirus is going around and that we could all get it, and that some people are going to more people are probably going to die from it, and that we focus only on that and just forget about the fact that, like, those things that you were mentioning about, like, the fact that some people are going to get a break financially, and most people aren't going to get a break financially. And it's the thing that the people who aren't going to get the break and the people who are going to be down with it most are going to be the people who are kind of at the bottom of the kind of ladder or whatever.
Oh yeah, it's a class war, and that's all it is.
It's mental. So that's a good kind of, like, if anything good comes out of it, I suppose, if we can do something collectively and organise ourselves to come out sort of with a better model for tenants and everything like that there at the end, I suppose that's kind of a positive thing, I suppose.
Yeah, the Connolly Youth Movement actually have up on their website, I don't know if you've seen it, but they're naming and shaming businesses, big businesses, who have let all their staff go.
Yeah.
But they're also posting figures of, it was just like, what were their profits?
Yeah, actually, I seen the link, but it didn't click into it. I just seen it earlier on, just in passing. But,
yeah,
I suppose that's where we're at. Like, it's people are going to be showing up for, really, like, the true colours are going to shine through, I suppose. And, like, the positive side of that is that, like, a lot of businesses and are like, treating their employees right and looking out for each other and stuff like that. There, people are looking out for each other. It's the other side of that, I guess. But here. So, this is, what have you been up to aside from the virus?
Yeah, I was actually just about to say that to you. I'm sure everyone is. I'm sure that's what.
If anybody wants to skip the depressing part, just skip straight to 18 minutes.
Because I was just like, Jesus, it's probably just like, if there's anyone listening to this podcast, they're probably listening to try and get away from it.
I know, sure. Sure. That's it. Fuck it. Let's talk about something else then for a while. We haven't seen each other in ages. So what have you been up to for the last while? Since the last time we met, you started the college course and stuff like that there. So
yeah. So I'm in a level 5 horticulture course out in Cabra. So which is really good. It's like something I've always kind of wanted to do in my life, and now because the year before that, previously, I was a full-time poet. So I would have been a full-time writer, teaching in schools, doing performances, commission works, and then I kind of had like a little I wouldn't call it a light bulb moment, but I think it was like a slow realization that was something that I didn't want to do with my life anymore. So then it's funny. It was like I'd never before in my life set goals until someone said, it was like, you should write down some goals and then try to achieve them. It sounds simple enough, but I was like, okay, go on. So 3 things I wrote down were that I wanted to study horticulture. I wanted to sell more of my knitting because I did a lot of knitting. And the third thing is that I wanted to cycle around the country. And in the space of 3 months, I had managed to do all 3 of those things. I'd cycled around the country, stayed with you for a good bit as well. So I got to sell more of my knitwear, thankfully, via your lovely brother Nisha and JJ and Makara, which was amazing. And then I got to just somehow magically just got to be on this lovely college course, and like seriously, I've never been happier in my life.
It's mad, like, whenever I was thinking about doing this podcast, with 2 of us doing it together, I was just thinking like the conversation will take its own course, because it was pretty hard to figure out where we were going to start, because you've just been involved in so many things. So, and then you're also like the poet in residence for Bows Football Club as well, weren't you, for a while?
I was. That was a long time ago. Yeah, I was the poet in residence for like 3 years. The first one in Ireland. There have been kind of unofficial poet in residence, I suppose, like Pat Inglesby and stuff. He used to write poems about bows in the 80s, and Michael D. Higgins, our president. He is he's the honorary president of Galway United, and he's also a poet. Yeah, so he's actually written poems about Galway United as well. So, but I think I was the first, to be officially named, to be officially titled. It was incredible. Actually, it got like massive international recognition. It was funny. It was Dan Lambert actually. He was like, he just rang me up one day and he was like, "Here, do you want to do this? Just see what comes of it." We thought we might get like a newspaper article or something out of it, And God, it just caught on.
Unreal. Jeez, like the what was I going to say there? Oh yeah, no, I listened to that. Did you ever listen to that clip, Michael D calling your man a wanker?
I was just listening to that today. Yeah,
someone posted it. It was good. Brought a bit of humour to the day when I heard that earlier on. Yeah,
he's a serious bloke. I met him once. Actually, no, twice I met him. Right, once. The first time I met him, it was me and my mate Wayne, and we were walking through town, and we seen that a car was coming up the wrong way of a one-way street, So the car stopped after realising what it had done, and we were just standing on the road, and we seen this, and we looked in, and we were just like, "That's Michael D. Higgins."
He was driving up the wrong way?
His driver was driving him up the wrong way, but
shit.
But he was in the front, and he was like this, just like covering his face, trying to make sure that we didn't take photos of him and stuff. And
was he the president at that time?
He was, yeah.
Oh, so they were doing it on purpose?
Sorry?
Were they doing it on purpose? Like, was he just trying to get somewhere, or was it by accident going up the wrong way?
I think it was by accident going up the wrong way or something. Or maybe he was, I like to think that he was in somewhere that he wasn't supposed to be. And it was just like, because he was covering his face, when he saw that we spotted him. So we were thinking that, maybe there was something, there's some secret Illuminati shit going on there that he didn't want us to know about.
So then, here, do you want to fucking rattle out a poem?
Yeah, I could rattle out a poem, sure.
Seeing as we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be class.
Well, seeing as how you're all the way down there in Cork, I think I could, I could possibly say a poem which is about growing up in Dublin, but it starts off with a little rhyme that my dad used to say to me years ago, because my dad's a taxi driver, and it's just like, I don't know if you've ever known a taxi driver, ever been in a taxi driver's car where they just start rattling off jokes and little things,
Yeah,
so my dad,
King of the banter.
Here,
yeah. I'll tell you actually a story about taxi driver, kind of connected to Dublin. Before you bang into that, I think we were up with Dan in the Bang Bang, right? And then me and Nisha had to get a taxi across to Fox Rock because we were going to a christening over there, and we get this taxi driver was just like that, like he was king of the banter, like he was telling us stories the whole way, and he goes, he's like, do you know what I love coming over this direction is I just love going to the Bose shop. And because we had been up with Dan, like the Bose were playing the night before, so I was like, oh really, a big Bose fan, are you? He's like, oh yeah, I love Bose, so I do. I was like, did you see the match last night? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, the Bose were playing last night, or you know, in Gilliam, didn't see the match right now. He's like, oh no, fucking soccer, I fucking hate soccer, I'm talking about the headphones. He's like, no, Bose fucking I was deadly serious, and I was deadly serious as well. I thought he was talking about a soccer club, but anyway,
that's hilarious.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh yeah. But yeah, this is just like a little rhyme that my dad used to say to me. So it starts off like this: are you from Cork? I am a roo. Do you eat potatoes? By God I do. Now which way do you eat them? Skin and all. You must be joking. Not at all. Now the first rhyming couplet I ever learned, this was my dad's usual morning call. Up on Saturdays for Denny's, batch bread and DDSL Premier Football. And I remember all the outflows, stoned out of it on the sidelines, cheering us on at 9 o'clock. And him in the car home telling me the same taxi driver jokes 100 times over. I'll have to beg him to stop. It's in the blood, he'd always say, Lewis, is what makes us the way we are. You can take the boy out of the flats, but you can't take the flats out of the boy, and there's no change in that. Now, we'd stop on the way home from McDonald's, and for him to do was lotto. It was usually around this time to me he'd mutter his same old motto. By this time next year, Lewis, we'll be millionaires. We're on to a winner, he'd say. Or that I'd make me fortune when I was older and I could look after him and me ma one day. Now, he said this with such assurance that I was certain that this was a sure thing. Football, boxing or music, it's your choice, Lewis, so I made sure I learned how to shoot, fight and sing. Now, me brother, different story altogether. I remember one time he drove me home from school, buckled out of his head drunk, screaming to me every slur under the sun, calling me a frigid or a faggot, or any other poxy word he could think of to slag you. I met him on my holidays was the common phrase I'd have to use back then when I hadn't kissed anyone. It's mad how things change when you were young. Because fast forward only a little bit, but now it kind of feels like rewinding in time. When I travel up as far as the Ballymun Flats to spit my very first rhyme. Now the soundtrack at those times was Enter the Woo and Straight Outta Compton and Chronic by Dre. We used to get into scraps over who'd be easy, and we'd rap the NWA without pause, relating to a struggle back then before we even knew what a struggle was. And we used to have Pac and Biggie out the phones, and we used to stick them together through infrared to straight sonic swap the newest polyphonic ringtones. And when winter came around, the whole place caught fire, came alight with light colour and sound. Bangers and smoke bombs off on the back of the bus, burning all pallets, all tyres and wheelie bins at Broomer, and no sooner it'd start would the guards come to smack the fuck out of us when we got smart. Now when that had happened, we'd take flight over the L-wall, through the Industo, snatch and go from and on the run. Sure, what else would you do for fun around here? Tesco trolleys and empty cans, they litter the banks of the royal corruption. Cause your chats are lethal, your tunes are banger, and your docker lumps tucked into your socks. And half day Wednesdays after school is spent singing songs with all the alcos on the first lock. Now the sound ones, if you asked them right and gave them the odds, they'd run in and get you a few beers. It's mad how things change through the years. Cause see, there's things that you learn when you're working class. It's that even for all the broken glass and the bricks and the mortar that give teeth to back lanes and streets. It's that for all the screeching tyres and the burnt out and the revved up engines that hang on to every breeze. It's that from a spark of a joint beside a bonfire in Animal Lane, you realise it's that from boy to man fully grown, this concrete wild is home. And that'll always be the same. And it's only when you're older that you see it. But to me, it's strange. The way some things round here, they just don't change. There you go.
Oh, class. Thanks very much for reading that out, or for not even reading it, for doing it off the top of your head. Here,
no worries. But that was so that's a really, really short excerpt of my play Obsession, which I'm hoping to put on this year.
Oh, here, we were talking about that before. We'll have to flip and get that on the go down in the gym in Cork as well.
Oh, yeah, we were saying that.
Yeah. Everything's gone to fucking shit since then. But
this is it.
It'll still happen.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's just like, the sun will shine again.
Yeah. Here, how do you come up with your poems?
How do I come up with them?
Yeah.
So my work is very kind of heavily based in, I suppose, kind of like the life I knew. It's just like, it's very based in the community that I would have grown up in, family. Especially, I would write a lot about family, and drug culture. So it's just kind of finding where all those three kind of mix. So coming up with my poems, generally, what I like to do is like either think of a proverb, or think of a story, or think of something that I've just heard, something that was kind of just sticks with me. So for example, that poem starts with this little rhyme that my dad used to say to me when I was younger, and that's something I'll always remember for the rest of my life, even though he hasn't said it to me since I was about 7. But it's stuck with me, So I think when I'm trying to come up with poems, I think of all the things in my life that kind of stick with me, that I'll probably never forget.
Here, do the rhyme again.
Are you from Cork? I am a roo. Do you eat potatoes? By God, I do. Now, which way do you eat them? Skin and all. You must be joking. Not at all.
It's mad the things that you remember, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Sometimes I do that poem, and it's people who are a bit older than me, maybe in their 40s and 50s, they'll say that back to me. They'll say that line back to me,
Yeah.
So like, even without having to prompt them, there's a call and response there.
Yeah, it's something that I kind of like wish I had have maybe taken the time to document or record whenever I was younger. But my great aunt, it's my granny's sister from Belfast, Aunt Lily. She's dead now a good few years, but she used to always get, I'm the oldest in our whole family of there's something like 16 or something grandchildren on one side, on the Belfast side of the family, and she's always get the kids and put them on her knee and just bounce them up and down and do these little rhymes that are they're really old from the flipping way back when, and they kind of feel like they're things that I don't know if they're going to carry forward. Some of them are long forgotten now. They were class, just bouncing, doing a little ring a rosy and all 100 different versions of it and different types of it.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing to even just be able to remember, because my granddad would have died when I was very young, but he was still one of my best mates up until that time. I used to always go into his house for tea, chat, and we watched the football, and but he died when I was about 10 or 11 maybe. So I never really actually got to know him properly, so the only thing I really know about him is stuff that my ma tells me. But now no one in my family is overly political, or they're not really involved in any activism or anything, but I remember just going through my granddad's stuff one day, and I found his copy of James Connolly's Workers' Republic, and he had written in it his notes and how James Connolly's Workers' Republic conflicted with his Catholic views, because he was so my grandfather was staunchly socialist. He was heavily involved in trade unionism, but he was also staunchly Catholic, which was funny how to see the conflicts of his inner mind and his morals and his beliefs of socialism and religion, kind of how they come together. And just from reading these little notes, I learned a lot about him.
About your granddad?
about my granddad. Yeah, they're amazing things to have, like those little mementos, you know.
For sure. Like, I was actually thinking about this the other day when we were over in Boston and things were getting more serious with the virus and stuff. Someone had actually said it to Dan. They were like, write some shit down about what's happening now, because it's never going to happen again. Like, it's going to be like, people are going to be looking back at this being like, that was a massive massive event in world history. Like, what's happening now? And
global shutdown.
Yeah, exactly. And like, if someone has written some stuff down about it, some thoughts about what's happening now, and then, you know, like, someone in 100 years finds it, they'll be looking back at it with like wide eyes.
Yeah, it's a golden nugget of time.
Yeah, it is for sure. So, tell me, something that me and you chatted about before, which I think was kind of maybe one of the first times that we started talking about doing a podcast together, was we kind of got into a fairly deep conversation about your kind of transition from being, say, in that role with Bose as poet in residence, and then feeling like it was something that you didn't really want to do anymore. And I think the conversation was sort of centered around something that's not just specific to that situation, but I suppose that, like, a lot of people could probably relate to, regardless of what field they're operating in, is like that thing of like building up identity, building up a sort of like an identity around yourself based on you're doing one particular thing, whether you're a poet or you're a sports person or whatever, and then realizing that, like, that we're more than what we do, or more than the identity that we've kind of built for ourselves, or that other people have built for ourselves.
Yeah, it's so I suppose just kind of with me was that so look, I was a writer, I was a poet, I suppose a professional poet, if there is such thing. I was a professional poet for like 6 years. I was on national and international televisions and media outlets across the world. And I loved it for a time. For a couple of years, I was like, this is an amazing thing. Because for the first couple of years, it was spoken word, I suppose, especially not in Ireland, wasn't a particularly popular thing. Wasn't a particularly well-known thing. You could even consider it a cultural phenomenon in the sense of Ireland. Just, I suppose, kind of what kind of seems like a meteoric rise of, like, taking some of the best poets in the country out of basements and putting them on stages in front of thousands of people. 5 years ago, that wasn't something that we considered possible, or like a clear future. So it was just kind of like going through that, and it got to the point where it's a really hard thing to do what you love as a job. Because what I found happened to me was that instead of being someone who wrote poems, I became a poet, and I just became Lewis Kenny poet. And anytime I introduced myself to people, I had it in the mindset that I was like, oh, I have to be Lewis Kenny poet now, and that's what I have to be. That's what I'm doing with my life. And when you do that, you can really limit yourself. Like, I would consider myself a highly creative person. I like to try new things. I for 2 years I was a poet. In the last 2 years I was a poet. I didn't write any poems. I taught it. I taught poetry, and I maybe did commission works for people where it was just like for businesses and stuff. I wrote them like videos and different things, but I none of that was bringing me any joy. So it was just like to take on the identity of that. To take on that identity is also to take on an ego, and it was just making me miserable. So I kind of felt that was the right time to just kind of call it a day, because I realized I had to go through an ego death. I had to I had to go back. I had to kind of reincarnate myself, in the sense that, like, I need to go back to the beginning. I was just like, why do I create and why do I want to do this, and try to find that love again. There's actually a quote from Stephen Fry, where he's kind of quoting Oscar Wilde. So he's like, what he said was that Oscar Wilde said that if you know what you want to be, then you inevitably become it, and that is your punishment. But if you never know, then you can be anything, and there is truth to that. We are not nouns, we are verbs. I am a thing, an actor. Oh, sorry, I am not a thing, an actor or a writer. I am a person who does things. I write, I act. I never know what I'm going to do next. And I think you can become imprisoned if you think of yourself as a noun. So from now on, every day I just kind of wake up and think of myself as a verb. You know, it's like, what am I going to do today, not what am I going to be? And I think that's a powerful statement to make.
It's interesting hearing you talk about that, because the first day that we met, I think must have been about it must have been in July or something last year, around about that early July or end of June or something like that. Because so we were up in Dan's house when he was renovating it, and you just happened to call around, and then we just kind of headed off. And also I recognised that somehow recognised that t-shirt that you were on that day, the soccer jersey.
Yeah, it was a Clapton jersey.
Yeah, Clapton jersey, and then but the thing was that I like so we after that kind of went round to Bang Bang. I had a cup of coffee and we're sitting outside having the chats and stuff like that there. But on that, then in that space of time, like I think you maybe like shared a little bit of a poem or something with us. Also, you had the thing that you knitted, the neck thing, scarf, whatever, and dyed the wool yourself. And also, we organised that you were going to stop off in Cork on the way to like around Ireland while you were cycling around Ireland. So it was kind of, I suppose that kind of is a good endorsement of that thing that you just said about like not just being one thing, because from the very first minute that we met each other, I was like, okay, so you're obviously like you were doing loads of stuff. You were cycling around Ireland. You were able to do poetry, and also you were like, I think it was the pre-balaclava days. You were knitting neck warmers.
Yeah. And I think, do you still have your neck warmer?
Yeah, I have it upstairs for sure. It's hanging on. It's wrapped around, warming up one of my bedposts at the minute.
Good man. I'm actually. It's probably good way to announce it on a podcast. I'm actually knitting you a jumper at the minute.
No fucking way. What?
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah, I'll show it to you later.
You're the best. Thank you.
This is an important thing, okay? And this is an important thing to say for any listeners out there, is that there is such thing as, there is such thing as male bonding, in the sense that we all look out for each other, we all care for each other, and we all it's nice to be nice.
For sure. Like it's kind of like, if anybody wants to see that in action on a grand scale, they should go to a Damien Dempsey gig.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just like, it was just like, I've been to 2 Damien Dempsey gigs, and I've never received more cocaine, and I've never received more hugs in my life.
Yeah.
Seriously, from lads who find it really hard to open. I've seen them open. I've seen them open their hearts at Damien Dempsey gigs, and it's a beautiful sight.
Yeah, it is for sure. And actually, just like on a more personal level, like I mean, from that time that we met each other, which was late June or early July or something like that, there, like I think you must have stayed down in our house down in Cork for about 3 weeks out of the next 4 or 5 weeks after that.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing. No, it was a beautiful thing. I always it always really touches me. It was just like you had only met me once. You only met me the one time, and you were like, my home is yours. So any time I came down, I always felt at home. And like, I think especially now in the times we live in and stuff, it was just like, it's a rare thing to see in people. Like, I think I always find that people who maybe come from smaller cities or smaller communities, I think have that more kind of community that kind of like communal vibe, you know, that we're all here, we're all looking after each other.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And it was something I appreciated, you know.
Yeah, well, it's thanks very much for saying that. Like, but yeah, it still stands. You're welcome in here anytime. But here, you see what you're saying there. Like, it's true. I tell you a funny story. I'm not only got back from the States 3 days ago because I was over there on tour with Kneecap. So we travelled over on the 6th of March. They did a gig on the 7th of March, which was their US debut in New York. Sold out gig. It was unbelievable. And then there was a break the next day. We were going to Boston, and then the shit really started to hit the fan with the coronavirus, whatever, and all the gigs got cancelled. We actually, a side story, went to see Lincoln in a wee town outside of Boston, like Northampton it was called. It was amazing. But when we went over there, I got an infection in my arm up here, and I actually didn't think it was infected until the gig. And one of our friends, Taylor, came to the gig, and I was like, I think there's something wrong with my arm here. And she was like, fuck, son, that's fucking infected. That's what's wrong with it. So I was like, had to go to the doctor in Manhattan, which I was like, shit. Because
that's
it was
expensive.
Expensive, like, yeah. So I called my travel insurance and to email the details of my travel insurance policy to it was kind of like SouthDoc, like a kind of emergency, like a, you know, those kind of doctors that's open all the time. It wasn't like a GP. It was just like it's kind of like open in the middle of the city every day. And the phone call to the travel insurance company cost me 60 quid because it was €2 a minute. And turns out they sent the form in, and the people in the two people working on the front desk were sound as a pound. I went down, I was like, you must be flipping wrecked with this virus thing going around. Like, if people coming in all the time, they're like, oh man, like every 2 minutes there's somebody coming in with a sneezing or coughing or a sore throat or whatever, and they couldn't test. I was chatting away to them anyway, and they were like, look, this form's wrong, you're going to have to get it sent again because they've got your first name as your second name and your second name as your first name, so we can't put it through. And I was like, what? I was like, the phone call that I made to get that form sent in cost me 60 quid. And they were like, what? No way. And I was just like, the gig at this stage, like the gigs were getting cancelled, and my arm was infected. Like the lads were off to Central Park hanging out, and I was in the doctor's trying to get this sorted, and I was skint. And in the end, I was like, just like, how much is it going to cost if I just need to go now? I'll try and claim it back from the insurance. They were like, it's going to be like $250 or whatever, and the prescription was going to be extra. Anyway, I went in to see the nurse, and she was like, geez, you've had a hard day. I was like, I know. She was like, look, I'm going to give you a discount on the prescription. Normally it'd be like $75. You can get it for 50 with this discount. And then I went back out to reception, and the girl and guy in reception, Samantha and Frank, Samantha just turned around to me and goes, here, look, sounds like we had a bit of a rough ride the last day or two. She's like, I'm going to look after this bill for you so you don't have to pay anything. And whoa. In America, I walked out and didn't pay anything. I was like, at the time, to be honest with you, I was kind of having a hard time with being in New York because it's just so busy, and the gap between the people who are working in the shops and the people who are going to the shops in terms of like poverty and wealth is enormous. There's so much going on there. There's American flags everywhere. There's cops everywhere. It's kind of things were. Tension was rising with the virus as well, and I was kind of having a bit of a rough time just in my head. And then just when that happened, it was just like, it's amazing what, you know, like, no, regardless of where you are or where people come from, like there's good people all over the world that are there kind of like to look out for each other, and that's something that's probably even more evident now with the way that like everything is in quite a sharp focus now with how people interact with each other.
Yeah, all legitimately. It's mad. It was just like I had another kind of similar story. I remember I went to a Ziggit festival before. This is years ago now, and so me and my mate Cuddy went. We had a great time, but then we lost each other somehow, you know. And my phone died. I was wearing like I'd lost my t-shirt. I only had a pair of shorts, and I mean, it was a thunderstorms and lightning, torrential rain.
That happened when I was a Ziggit as well. Actually, big, massive, all of a sudden, just like thunderstorm.
Oh, I wonder if this is the same.
Or was it last year? Was it 2 years ago?
No,
No.
a lot longer. All right, no, that doesn't matter anyway. But yeah, and then I couldn't remember where we were staying, you know, because the lads had checked us in, and like, you know, like they knew, and I was like always following them. So I was just like panicking the fuck. I was like, right, it's pissing rain, I've no shirt, fucking no way of getting back, and I don't even know where I'm going, you know, and stuff. But the only thing I knew was that it was beside a synagogue. So it was just like, and like Hungarian is just such a different language, and that, like, so I was just telling people synagogue, and they had no idea what was going on. Eventually, right, now listen to this, right, this was 5 in the morning. A woman was on her way. She was a nurse. She was on her way to work. It was pissing rain with an umbrella, right? She was on her way to work, and I was trying to get on a bus. They wouldn't let me on the bus because I hadn't a top on, and they didn't even know where I wanted to go, if I was going in the right direction or not. So this woman got off the bus. She got off the bus, gave me her umbrella, and walked me an hour and a half to get me to the place where I was staying.
No way.
And then went to work.
Whoa.
How incredible is that? Like, oh, and then the whole time she was giving me cigarettes as well. And she didn't speak English. Like, she didn't speak any English.
Wow.
So it was like we were walking along and kind of not saying anything. And I was just like, that is like the most incredible thing anyone could do in that, you know, and like, even from my own thing, I was just being like, just to always have that compassion, you know, for anyone, and just like, you know, time and money are very, you know, they're not massively important things, you know.
One thing that kind of similar story, not like, probably not as extreme as your one, because I still had my clothes and all on, but the first time that I came
naked
down
podcast.
The first time that I came down to Cork, was like before I moved down here, was to call into Na Piarsaigh, the club that me and my brother Carver were playing for, and so we came down to meet the manager and stuff like that there, and we were living in Limerick at the time, and we were going to move down here, and the manager says, here, look, there's a match on, an away match, do you want to come and watch it? So I went out and watched this match anyway, and Sean O'Halpin was there, who I knew a little bit from playing against him and from his couple of times when he visited Belfast or whatever, and like, this was like a major life lesson for me. Like, I think I was like 21 at the time. I was 21, and it had a massive impact on me since then.
And who's Sean O'Halpin? Sorry,
Sean O'Halpin. He played hurling for Cork. He's like actually one of my heroes when I was a kid as well. Like, he's a good few years older than me, and he played.
Is this the fella that's like a giant shit brick house that, like, is that there's like that famous video of him like shouldering this fella out of the way before like he hits like a 70-yard?
That's Dermot O'Sullivan. So Sean O'Halpin played for Cork for a lot of years, and his mum was from Fiji and his dad was from Fermanagh. Michael Mahurty has a comment.
It was just like
his mother from Fiji, his father from Fermanagh. Neither are hurling strong.
The Sean Old.
Yeah, so Sean O. So so I went to the match anyway, and after the match, I was chatting to Sean O on the sideline because he wasn't playing because he was training with Cork at the time, and then he's like offered to drop me down to the bus station, and at this time, like, Sean O was peak famous in Cork, like he still is, but for him to walk down the street, like, there's people coming up to him all the time and stuff, and he walked me down to the bus station, and people were coming up to him and having a chat with him, and he was being real nice to people and giving people the time and stuff like that there. When you're coming up to him, it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and sure, didn't we miss the bus? And he says, right, I'll drive you to Limerick. It's like 10, 11 o'clock at night. He was going to drive me back up to Limerick and then turn around and drive back down to Cork again, be back in Cork for like 2 or 3 in the morning, and then get up for work, whatever, at 7 o'clock in the morning the next morning. And
wow.
And for someone who has so much respect for, even as a kid, to do that, I was like, in my head, I was like, no way. I was like, you're like, I wasn't going to have that. I was like, no way. I was like, can't, like, you can't drive me to Cork. I was like, it's too much. So I actually ended up just staying up in his gaff, and then the next morning he dropped me down to John Gardner's house, who's another Cork player at the time, and John happened to be driving to Limerick for work, so he dropped me up to Limerick, but in the meantime gave me like a massive amount of gear, like jerseys and tops and stuff like that there, and shorts. So I ended up back in the house that I was staying in Limerick for university, with like the next day with a load of tracksuits and tops and stuff, just being like blown away by like just the kind of I guess like kindness, I suppose. By these two fellas that I'd been watching playing when I was a kid. I was watching them like playing at Croke Park, so it's mad. It's and it's good when things like that happen, because when they do have a big impact on your life, then you kind of pass that on to somebody else if you ever get the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, Jesus. There was one time I remember I met Gary Breen in a hotel. It was the Wolves. The Wolves team were in the hotel, and my dad fought Mick McCarthy in the hotel. Like, he got drunk and then like had a scrap off him in the hotel. And then the next morning I got to meet Gary Breen, and I tripped. I tripped on the way over to shake his hand, and then just kind of like headbutted him in the bollocks. And I was just like, how is this hotel not thrown us out yet? Like, you know, I love Gary Breen in the bollocks, and my dad has a fight off Mick McCarthy.
Yeah.
But sure, look.
Yeah. People are probably wondering what that is in the background there.
Oh, this is a beautiful artwork made by Lost the Plot, DJ Provi.
Your number one customer for Balaclavas?
My only customer. Sorry. I've had 3 customers for Balaclava. No, 2 customers for Balaclavas. One was JJ, and the other one was Roxanne and Liam.
I seen it. Was it like a purple one or a pink one?
Yeah, so she has 2 twin sisters, Ruby and Amber, and so she commissioned me to make a purple and pink balaclava for them. But this JJ actually, out of the kindness of his heart, because like JJ actually did pay me for it, because the first balaclava I made him was real. Sorry, the first balaclava I made him was like this real buckety looking thing, but someone actually stole that on him. At a festival, someone stole his bag, so we lost that one, and then he commissioned me to make another one, and then so the second one, it's actually good that someone robbed that, because the second one I made him was actually like really good.
And I think you made the first one in this room that I'm sitting in.
I did, yeah.
I remember sitting right there, just in front of where I am now, didn't it? And he didn't know it was coming.
No. Because I was thinking, because I told him like when I was like heavily intoxicated, I was just like, yeah, I'll make you a balaclava. I didn't think he'd actually think I would do it, but there you go. And but yeah, as a thank you, for that, JJ made me this, which I think from what we were talking about, identity and ego and stuff, I think is also kind of quite apt. It says, I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah. And like the pieces of art that JJ makes are unbelievable. They're on that Instagram page, the art inside my head, if anybody wants to check it out. Such a nice thing to have one of those. Actually, you know what? It's way bigger than I thought. Like when you see them on Instagram, you think they're A4 size, but that one's massive.
Oh, this is it's probably like
maybe that is A4 size and you're just really small.
No, I think this is A2.
Yeah, it's nice size.
It's nice. It's a good canvas.
Tell me this here. So I'm gonna go and read a story live on YouTube to people. Anybody who tunes in about 15 minutes. Any chance would you be able to say the poem about the time that you took MD for the first time?
Oh, the poem where I'm in the gaff and I've taken MDMA?
The first time you took it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
So this is a poem called MD Amazing. So as we take a fill of overkill and these ghostly crushed up looking little blue pills with nothing but a flat can of grolsch to pop away, I find a nice warm bit of the bed and cuddle up, barely able to even fit onto it. Now, I'm wrapped up in perfectly weighted skag blankets and cheap faded tie-dye tops as we excitingly wait to awaken the wide-eyed prophets that lie dormant deep within us. Now, some are eager than others to do so from looking around, I assume. And even though I shudder at the draft creeping in from the window of this poorly insulated room, I simply light another rollie because I take great solace from the promise of what my mates have just told me, that I'll be coming up soon. And that the massive amounts of MD that'll be flowing through me and through my veins will fuel and sustain me. Remove all pain as I gain eternal empathy for those around me. And I know this might just be the drugs talking now, but at any rate, the walls of social barriers that generally separate us have been temporarily broken down, so right now in this present moment, I think yous are all really fucking sound. So I go give Rebecca a tug of her jumper, then I jump up to hug her and tell her I love her. Even though I only know her a couple of days, I'm in a utterly butterly lovey-dovey love haze with her. And then I hover what feels like 3 feet in the air as I move over to caress the curious curls of Emer Chambers' voluptuously original hair, as if to say that I'm an explorer and I've found a new world and I'm going to live here for a while. But then out of nowhere, this deep and trancing hypnotic house music hits me and I feel like I could achieve anything in the world but remove this smile. This is MD amazing. You've no idea how happy I am right now. I bellow as I throw on a slick pair of shades I got from somewhere which for some reason saw fit to tear up half the room to find. Just so I could disguise me dilated eyes and settle a score on me typewriter jaw which I couldn't help but grind. But the beautiful thing about it was that nobody else here seemed to mind. All equals. Everyone's just happy to be having a good time. Cuddy in the corner buzzing away can't seem to do a thing wrong on DJ as he plays a sweet tune and musical flirtation to the palpitating strings of our hearts. Joined us all, we are all stars of a consolation and sang sourly to the sky revelations. It's just good vibrations. It's a sweet sensation. His sensation vibrates heavy melodic waves throughout the reserve flowing energy in my body. I'm on top of the world right now, man. And nobody here is going to stop me. Except fast forward 2 hours later and I've started to come down. Fuck. I feel as though I've been raw fucked and jaw hooked by the session, and all I can say in his presence is good golly, Miss Molly. And even though I sit here with a tired frame weighed down by stale dreads of perspired hair, I don't despair to expire, but rather sit back and admire the experience that I've just been through. And even though I aspire to respire back to life, that feeling of higher existence, I think it's best in this instance just to retire. Because I'm feeling absolutely dire. And I think the tempt fate and try to acquire another supplier would just be fanning a fiery flame to the already flaring funeral pyre. But the rest don't seem to be down and done. Nah. See, because even though they have that frivolous fun, they frantically crave just another one more yoke before the sun comes out, one more yoke just to keep the buzz going, one more yoke and no joke. That'll be it from us for the night. And we can all cuddle up together and sleep tight together, bound forever by the bonds of yip friendship. But by now the sun's out, and there's only one left standing. Everyone knows them. Every group has one. You know that one member of the group who just can't seem to let the buzz die, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen someone yipped out of it exposed by breaking daylight, but it is one of the most sickening sights you're ever likely to see. Especially if you're skagging absolute balls right now like me and you just wanted to drift off to sleep to some degree easily. But you can't because of this babbling creature with transformed features, like a nocturnal beast caught a morning fever, and a blackness that has consumed his eyes to make him seem soulless, as though trying to fill a hole inside him with this drug that gives him temporary relief from his inner insanity. Good golly, Miss Molly, you're broken my reality. Where once everything seemed beautiful and real to me, now seems to be slipping freely through my hands. It's like trying to hold onto a fistful of sifting sand. Life and time is slipping precariously away from me. And I'm aware that what goes up must come down. But right now, in this present moment, I am free falling to the fucking ground. I just wanted a nice warm bed and all the comforts of home, but instead, I'm lying on a cold beer-soaked floor, wrapped up in a dome of jackets I made for myself to shelter me from this desolate crack then to be. And as I flip my last spliff, in the hope that I'll soon be able to drip off to sleep to some degree easily, I spark up, sit back, exhale, and chuckle to myself a self-pity and misery. Man, what a fucking drug is ecstasy. Boom.
Thank you. I remember the first time that I heard you saying that poem was in the storytelling night in Ackley. And
That was a great one.
It was about 20 of us there, or 15 or something like that. Everyone was in stitches laughing at it. Probably because everybody knew exactly what you were talking about.
There you go. Whether they wanted to admit it or not.
Yeah. But thank you. Here, I'm going to have to go and get ready for this next little storytelling bit live on YouTube. But Gura Mila Maigat for being here on the podcast and stuff.
Fáilte Ró Cara.
It's the first one, hopefully the first of as many as we can squeeze in during the period of isolation that most of us find ourselves in at the minute. But I'd love to do another one together sometime soon as well, because genuinely we could just sit here talking for another few hours and keep going with the conversation. Yeah,
well, very soon it's going to be me and Roxana. We're going to be cycling down to you, so shouldn't be too long.
Unbelievable. I'm really looking forward to it there. So any parting word for the masses?
I think if people haven't gone around to explore Ireland yet, like their own country, like really just get out there. If you have a bike and you can do it, it's a really affordable thing to do, and you learn a lot about yourself. It really did a lot for me. And if anyone wanted help with it, I could do that. What's the Irish phrase? What's a Nícearca Curla Céile?
Nícearca Curla Céile.
Yeah.
Definitely. Actually, sorry, that could be a topic of the next podcast that we do together, because that was kind of one of your major things that you did in the summer there. And every time I think about that cycling trip, I think about the day that we were having the gym jam at Ackley. And
that was I'd
cycled from Youghal. You look like a man who was about to die.
I just got in. Well, because there was also, because I didn't know you that well either, right? It was that was another thing I appreciated, because I had no money. I couldn't get money out because my bank card had broke on the road.
That's right.
And I didn't have money to go into the gym jam. I didn't have money for food or for drink or anything. And you just looked after me the whole time I was there. And no, seriously, yeah, I don't forget it. Like
it was like it was a very special night all around, actually, and you were like looking back on it now, like
I was wearing the skirt.
A major part of the proceedings.
yeah. I was wearing a skirt, bleeding. I got the place cleaned up as well.
Yeah.
I rallied the troops and got the place cleaned.
At 7 o'clock in the morning the next day.
Cuddle puddle on the ground.
But I hope that we're going to see each other for a cuddle puddle very soon.
A social distance cuddle puddle.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Shit. We're going to have to figure something out about that. Maybe we can like wrap ourselves in cling film first or something like that.
Sadness.
Right. Here, McCara, I'll speak to you very soon. Here, Gramore. Fucking
big love.
Elbow tap.
Elbow tap. Actually, but well, like just really quick, you know when they're saying like about elbow taps and stuff, but that's where I'm coughing and sneezing.
That's exactly what I said. You should like cough into your left elbow and tap with your right elbow.
Yeah, it was just like, you might as well just let me like lick your face at that
Right here.
Sadness.
Enjoy the rest of the night. Slán go for This chapter of Roald Dahl's book, Boy Tales of Childhood, is called Little Alice and the Boil. If you want to go back to the start of this book, then go to episode 51 of the podcast here, and you'll find the first chapter of this book at the end of that episode. Little Alice and the Boil. During my third term at St. Peter's, I got the flu and was put to bed in the sick room, where the dreaded matron reigned supreme. In the next bed next to mine was a 7-year-old boy called Ellis, whom I liked a lot. Ellis was there because he had an immense and angry-looking boil on the inside of his thigh. I saw it. It was as big as a plum and about the same colour. One morning, in came the doctor to examine us, and sailing along beside him was the matron. Her mountainous bosom was enclosed in a starched white envelope, and because of this she somehow reminded me of a painting I once had seen of a 4-masted schooner in full canvas running before the wind. "What's his temperature today?" the doctor asked, pointing at me. "Just over 100, doctor," the matron told him. "He's been up here long enough," the doctor said. "Send him back to school tomorrow." Then he turned to Ellis. "Take off your pyjama trousers," he said. He was a very small doctor with steel-rimmed spectacles and a bald head. He frightened the life out of me. Ellis removed his pyjama trousers. The doctor bent forward and looked at the boil. He said. "That's a nasty one, isn't it? We're going to have to do something about that, aren't we, Ellis?" "What are you going to do?" Ellis asked, trembling. "Nothing for you to worry about," the doctor said. "Just lie back and take no notice of me." Little Ellis lay back with his head on the pillow. The doctor had put his bag on the floor at the end of Ellis's bed, and now he knelt down on the floor and opened the bag. Ellis, even when he lifted his head from the pillow, couldn't see what the doctor was doing there. He was hidden by the end of the bed, but I saw everything. I saw him take out a sort of scalpel, which had a long steel handle and a small pointed blade. He crouched below the end of Ellis's bed, holding the scalpel in his right hand. "Give me a large towel, matron," he said. The matron handed him a towel. Still crouching low and hidden from little Ellis's view by the end of the bed, the doctor unfolded the towel and spread it over the palm of his left hand. In his right hand he held the scalpel. Ellis was frightened and suspicious. He started raising himself up on his elbows to get a better look. "Lie down, Ellis," the doctor said, and even as he spoke he bounced up from the end of the bed like a jack-in-the-box and flung the outspread towel straight into Ellis's face. Almost in the same second he thrust his right arm forward and plunged the point of the scalpel deep into the centre of the enormous boil. He gave the blade a quick twist and then withdrew it again before the wretched boy had had time to disentangle his head from the towel. Ellis screamed. He never saw the scalpel going in and he never saw it coming out, but he felt it all right, and he screamed like a stuck pig. I can see him now struggling to get the towel off his head, and when he emerged the tears were streaming down his cheeks, and his huge brown eyes were staring at the doctor with a look of utter and total outrage. "Don't make such a fuss about nothing," the matron said. "Put a dressing on it, matron," the doctor said, "and with plenty of Mag's sulph paste," and he marched out of the room. I couldn't really blame the doctor. I thought he handled things rather cleverly. Pain was something that we were expected to endure. Anaesthetics and pain-killing injections were not much of a thing in those days. Dentists, in particular, never bothered with him. But I doubt very much if you would be entirely happy today if a doctor threw a towel on your face and jumped on you with a knife. Goat's tobacco. When I was about 9, the ancient half-sister got engaged to be married. The man of her choice was a young English doctor, and that summer he came with us to Norway. Romance was floating in the air like moon dust, and the two lovers, for some reason we younger ones could never understand, didn't seem to be very keen on us tagging along with them. They went out on the boat alone, they climbed the rocks alone, they even had breakfast alone. We resented this. As a family, we'd always done everything together, and we didn't see why the ancient half-sister should suddenly decide to do things differently, even if she had become engaged. We were inclined to blame the male lover for disrupting the calm of our family life, and it was inevitable that he would have to suffer for it sooner or later. The male lover was a great pipe smoker. The disgusting, smelly pipe was never out of his mouth except when he was eating or swimming. We even began to wonder whether he removed it when he was kissing his betrothed. He gripped the stem of his pipe in the most manly fashion between his strong white teeth and kept it there while talking to you. This annoyed us. Surely it was more polite to take it out and speak properly. One day, we all went in our little motorboat to an island we'd never been to before, and for once, the ancient half-sister and the manly lover decided to come with us. We chose this particular island because we saw some goats on it. They were climbing about on the rocks, and we thought it would be fun to go and visit them. But when we landed, we found that the goats were totally wild and we couldn't get near them. So we gave up trying to make friends with them and simply sat around on the smooth rocks in our bathing costumes, enjoying the lovely sun. The manly lover was filling his pipe. I happened to be watching him as he carefully packed the tobacco into the bowl from a yellow oilskin pouch. He had just finished doing this and was just about to light up when the ancient half-sister called on him to come swimming. So he put down the pipe and off he went. I stared at the pipe that was lying there on the rocks. About 12 inches away from it, I saw a little heap of dried goat's droppings, each one small and round, like a pale brown berry. And at that point, an interesting idea began to sprout in my mind. I picked up the pipe and knocked all the tobacco out of it. I then took the goat's droppings and teased them with my fingers until they were nicely shredded. Very gently, I poured these shredded droppings into the bowl of the pipe, packed them down with my thumb, just as the manly lover always did it. When that was done, I placed a thin layer of real tobacco over the top. The entire family was watching me as I did this. Nobody said a word, but I could sense a glow of approval all around. I replaced the pipe on the rock, and all of us sat back to await the return of the victim. The whole lot of us were in this together now, even my mother. I'd drawn them into the plot simply by letting them see what I was doing. It was a silent, rather dangerous family conspiracy. Back came the manly lover, dripping wet from the sea, chest out, strong and virile, healthy and sunburnt. Great swim, he announced to the world. Splendid water, terrific stuff. He told himself vigorously, making the muscles of his biceps ripple. Then he sat down on the rocks and reached for his pipe. 9 pairs of eyes watched him intently. Nobody giggled to give the game away. We were trembling with anticipation, and a good deal of the suspense was caused by the fact that none of us knew just what was going to happen. The manly lover put the pipe between his strong white teeth and struck a match. He held the flame over the bowl and sucked. The tobacco ignited and glowed, and the lover's head was enveloped in clouds of blue smoke. "Ah," he said, blowing smoke through his nostrils, "there's nothing like a good pipe after a bracing swim." Still we waited. We could hardly bear the suspense. The sister, who was 7, couldn't bear it at all. "What sort of tobacco do you put in that thing?" she asked with superb innocence. "Navy cut," the male lover answered. "Players Navy cut. It's the best there is. These Norwegians use all sorts of disgusting scented tobaccos, but I wouldn't touch them." "I didn't know they had different tastes," the small sister went on. "Of course they do," the manly lover said. "All tobaccos are different to the discriminating pipe smoker. Navy cut is clean and unadulterated. It's a man's smoke." The man seemed to go out of his way to use long words like discriminating and unadulterated. We hadn't the foggiest what they meant. The ancient half-sister, fresh from her swim and now clothed in a towel bathrobe, came and sat herself close to her manly lover. Then the two of them started giving each other those silly little glances and soppy smiles that made us all feel sick. They were far too occupied with one another to notice the awful tension that had settled over our group. They didn't even notice that every face in the crowd was turned towards them. They had sunk once again into their lover's world, where little children did not exist. The sea was calm, the sun was shining, and it was a beautiful day. Then, all of a sudden, the manly lover let out a piercing scream, and his whole body shot 4 feet into the air. His pipe flew out of his mouth and went clattering over the rocks, and the second scream he gave was so shrill and loud that all the seagulls on the island rose up in alarm. His features were twisted like those of a person undergoing severe torture, and his skin had turned the colour of snow. He began spluttering and choking and spewing and hawking and acting generally like a man with some serious internal injury. He was completely speechless. We stared at him, enthralled. The ancient half-sister, who must have thought she was about to lose her future husband forever, was pawing at him and thumping him on the back and crying, "Darling, darling, what's happening to you? Where does it hurt? Get the boat, start the engine. We must rush him to a hospital quickly." She seemed to have forgotten that there wasn't a hospital within 50 miles. "I've been poisoned," spluttered the manly lover. "It's got into my lungs. It's in my chest. My chest is on fire. My stomach's gone up in flames." "Help me get him to the boat quick," cried the ancient half-sister, gripping him under the armpits. "Don't just sit there stirring. Come and help." "No, no, no," cried the now not so manly lover. "Leave me alone. I need air. Give me air." He lay back and breathed in deep draughts of splendid Norwegian ocean air, and in another minute or so he was sitting up again and was on his way to recovery. "What in the world came over you?" asked the ancient half-sister, clasping his hands tenderly in hers. "I can't imagine," he murmured. "I simply can't imagine." His face was as still and as white as virgin snow, and his hands were trembling. "There must have been a reason for it," he added. "There's got to be a reason." "I know the reason," shouted the 7-year-old sister, screaming with laughter. "I know what it is." "What was it?" snapped the ancient one. "What have you been up to? Tell me at once." "It's his pipe," shouted the small sister, still convulsed with laughter. "What's wrong with my pipe?" said the manly lover. "You've been smoking goat's tobacco," cried the small sister. It took a few moments for the full meaning of these words to dawn upon the two lovers. But when it did, and when the terrible anger began to show itself on the manly lover's face, and when he started to rise slowly and mechanically to his feet, we all sprang up and ran for our lives and jumped off the rocks into the deep water.